She inherited a fortune so vast it made Rockefeller nervous. Her name commanded rooms before she entered them. Her mansion had more square footage than most American towns had ambition. And yet, by the time she died, she had nothing. Not a dollar, not a deed, not even a room to call her own. This is the untold story of America's greatest heiress. A woman born at the absolute pinnacle of Gilded Age wealth, handed an empire that should have lasted centuries, and watched it collapse, brick by brick, betrayal by betrayal, signature by signature, until the most famous fortune in America was simply gone. The mansion still stands today, half crumbling, half magnificent, a monument not to wealth but to what wealth costs when the wrong people are trusted with it. You have heard stories of men who built empires from nothing. This is a different kind of story. This is the hidden empire of a woman who had everything handed to her and had everything taken away. This is the billion-dollar secret that American history buried, the shocking truth behind the most tragic heiress this country ever produced. The question is not how she got the money. The question, the one this entire story exists to answer, is this: how does the richest heiress in America lose every single dollar of it? To understand her fall, you first have to understand the world that created her. Late 19th century America was a nation in the grip of something intoxicating and dangerous, the Gilded Age. It was an era of staggering inequality, where a handful of dynasties controlled more wealth than entire governments. Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, Morgan. These were not just names, they were power structures. They were the gatekeepers of American capitalism, and every dollar in the country flowed in some direction through their hands. For women in this world, inherited wealth was both a crown and a cage. A wealthy woman was not an independent force, she was an asset. Her fortune was managed by fathers, transferred to husbands, administered by male trustees, and protected by lawyers who served the family name, not the woman herself. The law agreed. In most of Gilded Age America, a married woman could not legally control her own inheritance without her husband's consent. This was the world she was born into, a world where her fortune was simultaneously the most powerful thing about her and the thing most likely to destroy her. Old money families in this era operated by a specific code. Wealth was to be preserved, consolidated, and never, under any circumstances, exposed to public scandal. Banks and legal dynasties enforced this code with iron precision. The gatekeepers were everywhere. Here is why this matters to you today. The debate about inherited wealth versus earned wealth is not a modern invention. The question of whether extreme wealth concentrated in one family is a gift or a curse, that argument was being fought in courtrooms and drawing rooms in 1890, and it is being fought on social media right now. The system has changed its clothes. The mechanics have not. She was born into a world of impossible grandeur and impossible loneliness. Her father was a titan of American industry, a man whose name appeared in newspapers more often than most politicians. Her mother came from old European money, imported to America like fine porcelain, decorative, fragile, and enormously valuable. Together, they produced a daughter who was, from the moment of her birth, not simply a child but a financial instrument. She grew up in a household where the staff outnumbered the family 3-1, where birthdays were celebrated with guest lists curated for social strategy, not affection, where the word love was used most often in the same sentence as the word inheritance. But there was one moment, one scene from her childhood that explains everything that came after. She was 9 years old. She had wandered into her father's study during a meeting she was not supposed to witness. Around the mahogany table sat 3 men in dark suits, her father's lawyers and a business associate she had never seen before. On the table between them was a document. She could not read it, but she heard her name, and she watched her father sign something without looking up, without hesitation, without once asking what she might want. She understood, in that 9-year-old way that cuts deeper than adult comprehension, that she was not a person in that room. She was a line item. That wound never healed. It calcified into ambition, into a desperate, lifelong need to prove that she was more than a figure on a balance sheet, that her choices were her own, that her life belonged to her. It was this hunger, more than the fortune itself, that would drive every decision she ever made. And it was this hunger, this need to be seen, to be chosen, to matter beyond the money, that her enemies would eventually use to destroy her. While the rest of Gilded Age society was busy preserving old alliances and protecting established fortunes, she saw something nobody else had noticed. The opportunity arrived dressed as a marriage proposal. He was charming, well-connected, and from a family whose social standing rivaled her own. On paper, the union was perfect, a consolidation of two great American dynasties. The press celebrated it. Society approved it. Her father's lawyers drafted the terms with quiet satisfaction. But beneath the surface of this golden arrangement was something she believed none of them had seen, a genuine partnership. A man who, she was convinced, valued her mind as much as her money, who spoke to her not as an asset to be managed, but as an equal to be respected. She moved with total confidence, no hesitation. She committed fully, emotionally, financially, legally. She restructured portions of her trust in ways that gave her husband access to investment decisions. She opened doors that had been sealed by 3 generations of careful legal architecture. The first signs were everything she had hoped for. Their social influence expanded rapidly. Their combined name opened rooms that even her father's fortune alone had not. Invitations arrived from Washington, from European courts, from the innermost circles of American financial power. For a brief, luminous moment, it appeared she had done what no one expected. She had turned inherited wealth into something rarer and more powerful, a genuine empire of her own making. She had not seen what was already unraveling beneath her feet. At the height of her power, she was not simply wealthy, she was a force. The first major move that announced her arrival on her own terms was the construction of the mansion. Not her family's estate, her mansion. Commissioned in her name, designed to her specification, built on land that she alone had purchased. It was a declaration of independence carved in marble and limestone, rising from the American landscape like a statement that could not be ignored. The mansion was extraordinary by any measure. 120 rooms, imported Italian stonework, gardens designed by the most celebrated landscape architect in the country, a ballroom that could hold 500 guests, a private art collection that European museums quietly envied. But the mansion was never just a building. It was a message. To her father's world, to her husband's family, to every lawyer and trustee who had ever made a decision about her life without consulting her, the mansion said, "I am here. This is mine. I built this." Her social empire expanded in lockstep with the walls going up. She became the axis around which Gilded Age society rotated. Her dinner table seated senators, industrialists, foreign dignitaries, and artists. Her endorsement of a cause made it legitimate. Her presence at an event guaranteed its place in history. She outmaneuvered rivals with a combination of charm and precision that her enemies consistently underestimated. When a competing social dynasty attempted to freeze her out of a key Washington alliance, she responded not with confrontation but with strategy, building a parallel network so powerful that the original alliance came to her. When a business partner attempted to dilute her stake in a shared investment, she had already restructured the legal terms 2 months prior, anticipating the move. Her competitive edge was this: she understood people. She understood what they wanted, what they feared, and what they believed they deserved. She could read a room the way a chess grandmaster reads a board 3 moves ahead, already positioned for the outcome she had chosen. At her absolute peak, her name was synonymous with American wealth, elegance, and power. She controlled significant portions of family trust investments. Her social influence shaped political appointments. The mansion was featured in every major publication in the country. Foreign royalty visited. Presidents wrote to her personally. She had taken a passive inheritance and transformed it into an active empire. She had done what the men around her insisted a woman could not do. And that, more than anything else, was what made her dangerous to them. The enemy she never saw coming had been in the room the entire time. It began quietly, the way the most catastrophic betrayals always do. Small irregularities in the investment accounts, a legal document revised without her knowledge, a trustee meeting she was told had been canceled, then discovered had taken place without her. A husband who had, somewhere between the wedding and the present, transformed from a partner into an administrator of her affairs, one who had been quietly, methodically, restructuring her financial architecture for years. The primary antagonist was not a stranger. It was the intimate network of lawyers, trustees, and family members who had, collectively, decided that her wealth was too significant to remain under the control of a woman who refused to be controlled. The conflict escalated with terrifying speed once it became visible. Legal challenges to her trust arrangements arrived in the same month. A family member filed a formal contestation of her authority over a key portion of the estate. Her husband's legal team, which she had not realized was separate from her own, presented documents that revealed a series of financial transfers she had not authorized, or had not knowingly authorized. The distinction, her lawyers told her grimly, was going to be very difficult to prove in court. What she stood to lose was not simply money, it was identity. The mansion, her statement, her declaration, her proof of self, was leveraged as a financial instrument in the legal proceedings. Her art collection was disputed. Her social relationships, built over decades, fractured under the pressure of the scandal as allies chose sides, and most chose the side with more lawyers. The internal collapse was the part history rarely records. Behind the legal briefs and the newspaper headlines, there was a woman in a mansion that suddenly felt less like a home and more like a fortress under siege. The isolation was total. The paranoia was understandable. Every letter was a potential legal document. Every visitor had an agenda. Every person she had trusted had, it turned out, been someone else's instrument. The wound from that childhood study, the one where she first understood she was a line item, tore open again, wider this time, and far more damaging. She had built an empire to prove she was more than a fortune. Now the fortune itself was being used to prove she had never been more than that at all. The moment everything ended came on a gray Tuesday morning in a New York courtroom. She sat on one side of the room. Her husband's legal team sat on the other. Between them, on the judge's bench, was a set of documents that represented the accumulated weight of everything she had built and everything that had been systematically dismantled around her. The courtroom was full. Press, rivals, former allies, people who had eaten at her table and drunk her wine and accepted her patronage now sat in the gallery watching with the particular expression of those who have come to see a fall confirmed. The central question before the court was this: had she, in restructuring her trust arrangements during the early years of her marriage, legally transferred irrevocable control of the primary estate assets to a joint administrative body, one that her husband's representatives now controlled by majority? Her lawyers argued no. His lawyers argued yes. The documents, stripped of all the social history and human weight behind them, appeared to support the second position. She had one final move available, a counterclaim built on evidence of financial manipulation and breach of fiduciary duty. It was a strong argument. Her legal team believed in it. For 3 days, the courtroom proceedings tilted in her direction. On the fourth day, a document surfaced that her own team had not seen. A letter, dated 7 years prior in her handwriting, appearing to confirm the joint administrative arrangement voluntarily. Whether the letter was genuine, misrepresented, or a forgery was a question that would be debated by legal historians for decades. In that courtroom, on that day, it was accepted. The judge ruled against her. The mansion, the trust assets, the investment portfolio, the art collection, all of it passed into administrative control from which she was effectively excluded. She walked out of that courtroom into a gray New York afternoon with her dignity, her name, and almost nothing else. The financial ruin was swift and total. Within 18 months of the ruling, the legal costs alone had consumed what liquid assets remained in her name. The mansion, her mansion, was transferred. Then disputed, then transferred again, entering a decade-long legal purgatory that left it neither properly owned nor properly maintained. It stands today in partial ruin. The ballroom ceiling has partially collapsed. The gardens are overgrown. The Italian stonework is cracked. Locals know it. Historians have written about it. No one has restored it. Some buildings absorb the energy of what happened inside them, and perhaps no developer has been willing to take on what the mansion carries. What she lost that money could not replace was simpler and more devastating than the fortune itself. She lost the narrative of her own life, the story she had spent decades constructing, the self-made woman, the independent heiress, the proof that a woman could take inherited wealth and turn it into genuine power, was rewritten by the proceedings into something smaller and sadder. The press, which had celebrated her rise with breathless admiration, now covered her fall with barely concealed satisfaction. Her children were affected in ways that took generations to fully surface. Her closest friendships did not survive the scandal. The social world she had built, the one that had revolved around her table, her ballroom, her name, quietly redistributed itself around new centers of power and pretended it had never known her so well. History at the time judged her harshly. She was described as reckless with her inheritance, naive in her choices, too proud to accept the guidance of people who knew better. These were all ways of saying the same thing, that she had forgotten her place, that the fortune was always too large for a woman to hold alone. She died with far less than she was born with. The exact circumstances of her final years are deliberately obscure. She had learned, too late, the value of privacy. What is known is that she never recovered the mansion, never recovered the fortune, and never, by any account, stopped believing that what had been done to her had been wrong. She was correct. She left behind a crumbling mansion, a contested legal legacy, and a cautionary tale that American history has never quite known what to do with. The tangible legacy is complicated. The legal battles that followed her case contributed, indirectly, to reforms in trust law that offered slightly stronger protections for women's inherited assets in subsequent decades. The mansion, in its ruined state, became a strange kind of monument, visited by historians, photographed by artists, argued over by preservationists. It refuses to disappear entirely, which feels appropriate. The shadow legacy is harder to look at directly. She was not the only wealthy woman of her era whose fortune was restructured out of her control by the men around her. She was simply the most visible. Behind her case were dozens of quieter stories, women whose names never made the newspapers, whose losses were never litigated publicly, whose fortunes vanished into family trusts managed by men who were never asked to account for them. The lesson her story carries is not about wealth. It is about power and documentation, and the danger of trusting that the people who benefit from your trust are trustworthy. She had every advantage: name, fortune, intelligence, social influence. She lost everything not because she was reckless, but because she operated in a system specifically designed to ensure she could not win, and she believed, against all historical evidence, that she was the exception. You are living in a world that has changed the laws but not always the mechanics. Wealth still concentrates. Power still protects itself. The people who sit across the table from you with documents may still have interests that are not yours. The story of America's greatest heiress is not really about the Gilded Age. It is about what happens when extraordinary wealth meets a system that was never designed to let you keep it. The mansion is still there, half standing, still waiting for someone to finally tell the truth about what happened inside it. Now you know. If this story moved you, share it. The history they didn't teach you deserves an audience.